The hospital is not a place where you recover and rest.
No.
It's a place where you get tortured.
Yeah.
It was a visit to hell. He's telling me I might have to put a spinal tap inside of you. You might have a brain fluid leak.
What was your first step?
Run to the feet of God and beg. All right, today I'm here with one of my best friends in the world, Ali Lovegood, and we are going to be talking about a very sensitive but very deep topic for me, which is my battle with cancer and how I was able to get through that. And the reason that I've decided that I would like to talk about it is because I feel like there's a lot of people out there going through diseases or they have loved ones who are going through diseases, and there's really not a ton of perspective. One of the things that I remember when I was diagnosed was going immediately to look for survivor stories and not really having a ton of luck finding good survivor stories. You're here because I think you know me quite well, actually, especially since we live so far away from each other, but I feel like you understand me a lot better than most people would. I don't think I am the easiest person to understand, but I do think you have a good sense, and hopefully we can provide people with a good background as to what happened and offer some sort of help and assistance and hope in this direction. So
Yeah.
let's go.
I have many questions. So you create this amazing company, you have a young family. Can you tell us what your life was like 2 months before you got diagnosed with cancer?
I was working like a horse still. COVID had kind of just subsided enough to let people go back into the world. Doctors were practicing again. So one of the real issues that I had was I knew something was wrong. I couldn't breathe out of the right side of my nose, and it felt like there was something in there. I had been to several urgent cares, because those were the actual doctors that were still out in the world during COVID, was urgent cares. But they were primarily dealing with COVID cases exclusively. And so when I would show up there, they dismissed me very quickly. They would give me antibiotics, told me I probably had a sinus infection. One of the doctors that I saw at an urgent care told me I might have a nose polyp. And after things started to go back to normal, my uncle's wife actually is in the medical profession. She sells medical equipment and she knows all of the doctors. And so I called her up and I was like, hey, I really need a good ENT. Can you recommend an ENT for me? Which she did. And I went to that ENT, but unfortunately the leading doctor at that place was not taking new patients and had zero time. So I had to go to his apprentice, the guy underneath. And there was many doctors at the ENT practice here. And I think it was Bergen ENT. It's in Englewood. And so I met with this guy. His name was, and I forget his last name off the top of my head. I tried to put him out of sight, out of mind. And I went in there and he looked up my nose, he scoped me and he said, yeah, you have a nose polyp up there. They'll send you into surgery and we'll just take it out. He also gave me steroids and antibiotics and told me that I should feel much better. No one had given me steroids up to that point. I had taken a couple of rounds of antibiotics because pretty much every urgent care that I went to gave me antibiotics.
Right.
And it was really bothering me because I couldn't, I felt like there was something up there and I couldn't breathe out of that nostril. So I did take the antibiotics, but never did anything. And then, with him, he told me I'd feel better, but I took the steroids, took the antibiotics, and then I went into surgery feeling the same as I did before I met him.
After your diagnosis, was there any thoughts that ran through your mind this is it, this is just may what get me?
That I was going to die?
Yeah.
The option to lose, the option to die was never really something that I considered highly. All I considered was how do I get out? How do I fix? How do I solve this? Because that's how my brain works. I'm a problem solver.
Yeah.
Problems on the table. I want nothing more than to solve it. And so this was just maybe the largest problem of my life, and figuring it out was what I was concerned with, more than what's going to happen. And also when you receive a diagnosis like this, especially for me, all I was told is that, hey, you have a malignant tumor. That was it. That was the diagnosis. There was no X, Y, and Z because I didn't have scans yet. I I didn't know what kind of cancer it was. I didn't know, God forbid, if it had I had no idea. I knew nothing. All I knew was that, there's cancer inside of you, growing. That's the news that I knew.
From episode 1 of From the Minds, you stated that you believed that you were getting cancer as a course correction to get back onto your spiritual path. During that time before you were diagnosed, before starting to have any symptoms, did you ever think that it would be a malignant tumor growing in your head?
One of the things that, now that it's, several years ago that this happened, one of the things that, frequently pops up to me is that during that COVID time, there were several phone calls that I had received about people worried about certain things, and I remember all those phone calls. I mean, and this is a hard thing to explain, but I have this very weird ability to know things.
Yeah.
And I remember one instance in particular. I'm not going to say who, but someone called me up and was like, X, Y, and Z is in the hospital. There's some weird thing going on. And I was like, it's good. It's nothing. So it's interesting to me that I'm able to, and you know this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm able to know things about other people, but with me, I had no idea. I did not see this coming at all.
So who all did, after you get diagnosed with cancer, the initial shock sets in.
Yeah.
Who was the first person that you told?
Well, my mother was the one that took me to the surgery, the first surgery that I had, which was supposed to be an in and out procedure, no big deal, right? And my mother was the one that took me to the surgery. So when I woke up from the first surgery, she was there, and the doctor had told her that I had a tumor. They didn't give us details of whether it was malignant or benign. They just said there's a tumor up there, and the doctor said I can't complete the surgery. We sent it out for biopsy, and then it was a waiting game after that. But my mother was the first one that knew I had a tumor. I really didn't tell anybody.
How do you think that was emotionally for your mother?
Well, she didn't know I had cancer. She never knew.
Okay.
I told her I was fine.
Of course you would.
Yeah. So she actually never knew.
Okay.
She just thought that I had a tumor. I told her I needed a second surgery. It was no big deal. It was benign. And that's what I told her.
Why do you think it was located in your head and not somewhere else throughout your body?
So the medical reason as to why I had, first of all, it was olfactory neuroblastoma is what I had, which was a tumor that was growing in my smell nerves, the olfactory nerves, which is located in the sinuses.
Yes.
And according to the doctors, the olfactory neuroblastoma that I had is one of the rarest cancers that actually you can have, and they don't know they don't really know anything anyway, but the factors that connect the cases are aerosol and sawdust. And so I was doing graffiti art for years, and also doing custom woodwork, which I made this table that we're sitting at right now. So tons of sanding wood, and I never wore a mask. So on a medical level, the how did I get there was because of all the spray painting and because of all of the woodworking that I did without a mask. But I feel that from a more spiritual perspective, and like you had brought up course correction, we all have a duty in our lives, and we're given certain gifts in our lives, and I feel that when we don't use those gifts, especially for the right reasons, we wind up creating this negative space. And for me, I am supposed to be a very clairvoyant person, which is interesting because I think most people would not know that about me, because I don't talk about it, I don't share it with people, only people who are very close to me. Again, it was located right in front of my pineal gland, which for me, I think I was holding in a lot of repressed X, Y, and Z, and I also think that I was not using that gift that I had, which I had been using for many, many years to help a lot of people. And I moved away from helping people with that gift and started using that gift more for my business success, my monetary success.
Were you still working like you do?
Yes.
Oh, of course. From the moment you wake up to the moment your eyes go to sleep, you were just nonstop working. And I mean, it's like you were pulled in 5 different directions at the same time. You had 10 questions being asked to you at the same time. People need things from you all the time. Like you're just go, go, go. You have to eat while you're doing so many different things and multitask. There's never just a moment where you can sit down, consciously eat your meal, and then just have the quietness around you.
There's been times where I tried to force myself to sit down for 5 minutes. You've seen me do. You've seen me.
So hard for you to do.
You've seen me try to force myself to just chill out. But the thing is it's hard to chill out when, like you said, there's 10 hands reaching for you at the same time.
Yeah. After ENT surgery, you're still under anesthesia or anything else, and everything else like that. Did your doctors tell you during that time you need to rest? Like, just take a few days, just rest.
I think that the doctor who performed the first surgery, I think that he was like, uh-oh. He started chopping away at a rare tumor. Mm-hmm. I didn't get much of anything from him other than, you need another surgery.
Did he ever refer you out to somebody else, or was he like, I'm going to
do
this?
He tried to tell me he knew somebody that could do the surgery, but I wanted nothing to do with him. He was a quack.
Did you feel good going into that surgery, the first one?
I did, yeah, no problem.
Okay. What was your initial reaction to your cancer diagnosis?
Panic.
Can you elaborate?
Well, the thing is that this guy made me wait like a week and a half to actually find out, right? And I guess, I think he knew from the, I think while he was, doing the surgery, they were already biopsying it and already knew it was cancer. Like, I'm like 99% sure. But he, I think, wanted to like give me that week and a half of like, but it was the worst, actually. Waiting to find out if it was or it wasn't was the worst. And the thing is that week and a half, I really did spend that time begging, like this, and also consciously, this is not cancer. This is not cancer. That occupied my headspace, was that it's not. And then what I was trying to do was I was trying to reconnect to my guardian angels. I was trying to reconnect with the light force, which before was at my fingertips. Mm-hmm. I think that if I had the muscle that I needed, I would have been able to prevent that diagnosis. I do believe that. But I just didn't have the spiritual muscle at that time to prevent it from happening.
Could you let us know what you did to fix it? Like, what was your first step?
Run to the feet of God and beg. That's my recommendation. If you get diagnosed with something like this, you need to bring as much light and as much of God's presence into your life as you possibly can immediately. You need to immediately run to the feet of the Creator and beg for help. And the thing is that we tend to only run to the feet of the Creator and beg like that when your life is on the line, or when you're in a situation that is that difficult to deal with. You can prevent things like that from happening if you're doing that on a daily basis and not waiting for the proverbial shit to hit the fan. If you are every day going to the feet of God and acknowledging that you deserve that mercy, and that you're willing to earn that mercy, then you're probably not going to run into that problem. That's my opinion. Unless it is a correction, unless it is a correction, it's something that you have to deal with in your life. If there's something you have to deal with and something you have to overcome, then it's coming. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing you can do about it. But the first thing, I think anybody who, God forbid, gets diagnosed with that or is dealing with that or wants to help someone dealing with that, you need to bring God into the picture. And if you're not a believer in God, you better start.
Okay, so let's get back into it. So the first surgery, after you had that, did they recommend chemo, radiation, any sort of thing
No,
like
these
that?
weren't cancer doctors. This was a bozo ENT. You know, I had to figure everything out now myself. The doctor did call me and he was like, hey, you need this other surgery. And apparently where the olfactory nerves are is above something called a cribriform plate. So there's a bone that's attached to your skull that separates your olfactory nerves from the rest of your sinuses. And so this doctor's telling me that I'm going to need to get a surgery where they're going to have to remove the front part of my face here to get to that section. And that was like, whoa, news. That was extremely, again, I was in the headspace of I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get this out of me. That was the headspace that I was in. The day I got diagnosed with cancer, I started making phone calls to hospitals. I did call my dad, and I did tell my dad, because there's been several times in my life where I was in big trouble. And whenever I get into big trouble is when I bring my dad into the picture, because my dad is very similar. I'm very similar to him in the regard that problem solving. And he is a top-notch problem solver. For him, the word no, I can't, it just doesn't exist for him. And so I called up my dad and I told him, and he was like, you need to go to New York. We need to find the best doctor in New York, X, Y, and Z. And so I started calling up doctors in New York. I spoke to a doctor or two. Wasn't feeling it, but I did learn from one of my conversations that actually the surgery that this original ENT guy was telling me I needed to have where they have to remove my face, actually that there's doctors that can do it endoscopic, which means up the nose, and you don't have to actually remove your face. Like, I think it was maybe even like the second day or the day of, one of my affluent clients comes into the warehouse and she brings her friend with her who just so happens to be a heart transplant surgeon in Mount Sinai in New York. She's like up there on the doctor level. And you know, I'm very, I try to be as I try to separate personal from business like as much as I possibly can, but I did wind up asking her, bringing her to the side and saying, listen, I'm so sorry to do this. I'm in a really crazy situation and I don't know what to do. And I told her the story, I told her the situation, and she said, give me 24 hours. And that night, she called me up and she's like, I got your doctor. We exchanged numbers and everything. She's like, I got your doctor. And it was Mark at Sloan Kettering. Actually, Mark is the one that wrote the thesis on how to do this surgery. So he is a head and neck cancer surgeon. So he deals with surgeries, not neurosurgery. He's not a neurological
Neurosurgeon.
Yeah, no, he's not a neurosurgeon, but he deals with head and neck cancer, skull-based cancer, which is what I was considered to have, a skull-based cancer. So her showing up and having that in with Mark, or making phone calls to get me in with Mark, and I was seen within a week by him, which it would have taken probably 6 months to get a meeting with Mark, because he's that busy, and he's also doing surgeries all over the world. And that week I got in with Mark, and one of the things I want to say is that as I was moving through this process, before I abandoned my spiritualism, numerology was huge for me. I would see 333 everywhere, 33, 333 everywhere, every day, multiple times a day I would see those numbers. And we're not going to get into numerology now, but again, once the cancer came into the picture, I started seeing that number again. I started seeing those numbers again. And true story, the first time I went to Sloan Kettering, which was actually the Montvale location in New Jersey, I walk in, I say, I'm here for my appointment, and the girl, who's the receptionist there, taking things, has a piece of paper on her thing that says handwritten 3333. And I was like, that's pretty crazy. I walk upstairs, I'm waiting for Mark to come see me, and the nurse comes out and gets me. The thing about Sloan that's amazing is that I never waited for an appointment. If they said my appointment was at 3 o'clock, I was getting seen at 3 o'clock, which is not heard of in the world of doctors.
It's not.
But in Sloan, their system is just, from my experience, was just excellent. Never waited for anything. Your appointment is here, which is what you need when you're going through cancer. Waiting is torture when you're going through cancer. And I think they have that figured out pretty good. Anyway, the nurse brings me to the room, and the room that they bring me in is 33, room 33. And I sit down in the chair, which is like a chair, kind of like a big chair where they're gonna, scope you and check you out. And I look over, and there's a clock on the wall, and it was 3:33 p.m. I mean, again, I'm not trying to get into like weird stuff about it, but again, you have to like think about the synchronicity of that. And for me, it was like I'm in the right place at the right time. That was for me what it meant. Mark walks in the room, and I believe that Mark connected to me kind of quickly. We're similar in age. We have a similar vibe. I feel like he connected that's my thought. I could be completely wrong about it, but it felt like he connected to me. And the thing that Mark said in that in that office that day was, "I'm going to get this out of you." That was his words to me. "I'm going to get this out of you," and that's what I needed to hear. And that's also when I was like, "This is my guy." And then he sent me for MRIs. He sent me for PET scans, and then the process in between there is absolutely bizarre, because what wound up happening was, as I ran back to the feet of God and I was begging, I actually left my house and I moved into my father's apartment. So my father had this apartment because I was going back and forth to the hospitals like almost every day now, getting tests done, all of this stuff, and COVID was still on the table. So I didn't want to get COVID and bring it home. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go and handle this, right?
Yep.
No one else needs to go through this with me. I need to. This was my. I felt like this was my. Not that like I didn't want anybody, or I was being like. This was my battle, and I was going to war. And when you're going to war, you need to be in this headspace. If you tell everybody around you what's going on, what's going to happen?
Everybody's going to worry.
Oh my God!
Yep.
This is that. Is that going to help?
No.
No.
It prolongs the process.
It's not going to help. I'm going to cause worry and angst to all the people that I care about. So I wanted to go into this and handle this on my own and get it done.
Yep.
It was a covert operation. Like I just wanted to get it done. But anyway, I go back to my prayer books. I go back to meditating. I go back to enhancing vibration, which is not the time for this conversation. But I'm outside on the balcony. So my dad has this balcony in the apartment that overlooks Manhattan. It's absolutely beautiful. And I'm outside and I'm praying. I'm on my hands and knees and I'm weeping so much. This is in between scans. I had met Mark. He sent me for he had scheduled my scans. I did not go for the scans yet, but he had sent them. All of my original paperwork went over to Mark, the original biopsy, the tissues, everything. So they keep all that stuff. And I'm outside and I'm on my hands and knees and I'm like just weeping. And weeping so much that there was literally a puddle of tears underneath my head. Like when I looked down, I remember there was a little puddle of tears. And I get up and I said to God, I said, you know what, I earned this, and I'm gonna unearn it. And that was the words that I said out loud. In that moment, I swear to you, I mean, again, you know me, I'm not a bullshitter.
Yeah.
I start feeling something really weird, like in my nose, like as if I have like to sneeze or something, like when you have snot.
Yep.
And you need to get the snot out of you. And I go to the bathroom and I go over the sink and I like that into the sink, and this black bean, it looked like a black bean, came out of my nose. It looked like a black bean. It was tissue. It looked like a. It wasn't like hard. It was tissue. It was black. It was this black bean, and my initial thought was, I need to light this thing on fire. I need to incinerate this thing. That was my thought. I took the thing, put it in a napkin, brought it outside, and I lit the thing on fire, and the thing starts squealing like a pig. That's the noise coming from this thing. I swear to God.
Sounds demonic.
I swear to you.
Yeah.
And the thing starts squealing, and I light the thing on fire. Allie, I swear to you, my phone rings. I walk back into the house after lighting this thing on fire, and my phone rings, and it's Mark, my doctor, who actually, if you know anything about these doctors, they don't really call you directly. They're nurses or the practitioners or the assistants, or somebody calls you. Mark calls me right after. I mean, I'm talking about, I lit the thing on fire. I was using sage at that time. I was outside. I would light sage. I would light incense. I was doing things like that. So I put it into the little cup that I had. Walk inside, phone rings. Like 10 seconds. And it's Mark on the phone. And he's like, Chris, I have crazy news for you. So what wound up happening was my original biopsy from Englewood Hospital, which was done by, this bozo doctor.
Yes.
They diagnosed me with aggressive cancer. So the diagnosis was aggressive. So there's 4 types of cancer, right? Again, don't kill me if I'm wrong, but I understand it to be A, B, C, and D, right? A being like, you could probably live with this for the rest of your life. D being like, you're done. I had C, right? So I had C, which is bad news, right? And I had to find this out myself, by the way, doing my own research. So I have aggressive cancer. Mark calls me up and is like, Chris, you're not gonna believe this. For whatever reason, I decided to have your tissues re-biopsied, and actually your cancer came back as non-aggressive cancer. They misdiagnosed your biopsy, which Mark told me he's never seen before, ever. I've never seen a biopsy change. This is what Mark's telling me. And I've never seen this before in my life. He's like, this is amazing. This is unbelievably good news, is what he's telling me. And I'm vibrating now. At this point, I'm like, I have the power. I go for my PET scans and my MRIs, and one of the things that I think is really relevant is that when you're going for your scans, when I was going into the machines, from the moment I walked into the building to the moment that I left that building, my consciousness was warrior mentality. There's nothing there. As I was in the machine, because initially they do a full body MRI and a full body scan, and I was in the machine for probably around 45 minutes to an hour, I would say, and not for 1 second did my consciousness stray from there's no cancer. There is no cancer. I'm going in this direction though, because I understand mind over matter, and I'm trying to rebuild this muscle to the place where I actually rebuild it to the degree where there is no cancer, and I don't even have to go through a surgery. Again, just didn't have the muscle yet, but anyway, as I'm in the MRI machine, there's no cancer, I'm fine. Anybody who comes into this MRI machine, they're gonna be fine. The results that come from this machine are gonna be non-cancer. This is non-stop from the moment I got into the place to the moment I left. Anyway, time for me to go meet Mark, a couple days later to go talk about the results of the scan, which actually you have to go in person. Mark can't, they can't call you and give you diagnosis over the phone. You actually you have to. Yeah. Which was different with my first doctor, who I told him to go F himself, and that I never wanted to see his face again, and if he wanted to give me my results, he had to call me. Which, that's what happened. And when I was going to get the results for my diagnosis, I literally felt like Rocky, like going to fight Apollo Creed. I really did, I felt like that. I felt like I was going to the fight. When I was a kid, I had many, many fights. Some of the fights that I had when I was a kid were very scary, because I wasn't just going to fight one normal person. I was going to fight a group of people who wanted to murder me. Yeah. And that was the feeling that I had, was like going into one of those kinds of fights. And when I get to Sloan, walk in the door, I think there's 42 different offices in the office. And all the doctors, whatever office they're in, 33 again is the office I go to. I sit down in the office, and while I'm sitting in the chair waiting for Mark, I'm like, everything is good. Everything is good. And I just keep repeating that for the 5 minutes that I was waiting for Mark. Everything is good. Allie, I swear to you, Mark opens the door, doesn't even walk in the room yet, and guess what he says to me?
Everything is good.
Everything is good.
That is amazing.
He didn't even walk in the room yet. He opened the door and looked at me and said, everything is good.
Wow.
After the scans, and I'm not going to get into how scans work and whatever it is, they assess, the report of your scans is an assessment of probability, meaning that it's a percentage. 25% cancer, 50%, 75% definite, right? 25% is potential, right? My scans show that I potentially have cancer in my olfactory nerves, but not potentially. And I'm sitting there, I'm asking Mark, I'm like, because this whole time, Mark doesn't know that I'm going crazy like this, but I'm like, Mark, is it possible that I just don't have cancer anymore? And he was like, well, no, we have a biopsy, we know that it's a malignant tumor, we know that there's cancer there. And I'm like, but the report says potential, probably. You know what I mean?
Right.
It doesn't even say probably.
Yeah.
Probably. It says potentially. What they wound up finding was that there were lymph nodes in my neck that were that lit up, is what the terminology it is. Which I had a tooth infection. I had a tooth infection at the time, and also I had the original surgery. So it could be that my lymph nodes were enlarged because of X, Y, and Z. Whatever it could be. He told me, I don't think that there's cancer there. He's like, but I still use protocol. I still got to send you for biopsy on your lymph nodes in your neck. Which, if anyone's ever had a biopsy on a lymph node in your neck, especially, whoa, dude, they put this like cannon needle inside and they suck tissue out of the lymph node. But the lymph node is so small that they have to use an ultrasound to find the lymph node and then get the needle exactly into the center of the lymph node and then extract it. It is wildly painful. It was wildly painful. I'm gonna say that. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but that was really rough. Anyway, biopsies come back. Again, shitting my pants again now. Like, because if it's spread now, I need to get chemo, and they're gonna have to remove my lymph nodes from my neck into surgery. During this time, there's a time of the year called the Omer, and the Omer is linked to Judaic tradition where it's a bad time. You don't want to do certain things during that time, but the Omer is a bad time. And again, I'm getting back into my spiritualism, and God is showing me around every corner that God is there, and that there's protection, that there's light involved in the process, there's mercy involved in the process. And I'm like, I want to show God that I see it. And for me, so Mark tells me that my surgery is actually going to be on the first or second day of the Omer. And I told Mark, I said, Mark, I can't do the surgery. He's like, dude, you need to do the surgery yesterday. And I'm like, no, I'm going to wait till the Omer is finished and then we do the surgery. And he's like, dude. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm like, this is my decision. And I waited an extra 3 weeks to get the surgery done, which I don't recommend anybody to do. If get the shit out yesterday, right? Mm-hmm. But for me, this was a different kind of journey. This wasn't just like I'm sick and I need to beat the sickness. It was a spiritual process for me. It was emotional. It was it was all of those things. And so I did push the surgery back 3 weeks, and the preparation for the surgery was kind of crazy. I mean, again, the biopsy results came back from the lymph nodes that there was nothing there, nothing to do, so I didn't need chemo. Remember one thing, when I was going into surgery with Mark, one of the things that I remember saying before going into I had gotten there and I was very nervous about it because, Mark had been telling me, what the worst case scenario looks like. They brought a neurosurgeon, was in the room while I was getting this, because the thing is that even though the scans tell you X, Y, and Z, mm-hmm. you don't know how far the cells have moved themselves. Right? You don't know until you're in there operating, because as they're operating, they're taking samples and having them biopsied, and you're trying to reach something that's called negative margins, meaning that there's tissue without cancer in it.
Right.
So your goal is to reach a negative margin, meaning that if you have a tumor like right there, as the tumor widened, like the area around the tumor could have tumor cells in it. Yep. And you want to find tissue around that tumor that's clean, no tumor cells found. Yep. So that's really the thing. But anyway, my surgery going in, he's telling me I might have to put a spinal tap inside of you during the surgery. You might have a brain fluid leak. I have a neurosurgeon coming in just in case like this. So this could potentially be like a 12-hour surgery, is what he's telling me.
Okay.
So again, you got to, the thing is that especially with cancer doctors, and this is something really important to remember, you need the best doctors. If you're going through something like this, you need the best doctors. And it doesn't mean that they're critically acclaimed. It means that you need to know, this is my doctor. And I knew that Mark was my doctor. There was nobody else. He was the guy for this. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And what I had, my point was what I was saying is, before going into surgery, I said, God, please use Mark as a channel. Mark is not the one doing the surgery. You're the one doing this surgery. And so I brought God into the picture before the surgery. And I said, God, I want you to do this. Use Mark. Mark is just a channel. Mark is just a vessel for you to do this surgery. And if I have earned this mercy, please remove it from, this was the conversation I had right before going into the surgery.
Was there any doubt during that time?
The thing is like, when you're talking about doubt, when you're going through this, your mind is a mess.
Yeah.
it's just a complete mess. There's no like yes or no, or you're a mess. And all you're doing is you're constantly just walking and picking up the pieces as you're going. So, was there doubt? For sure. Was I scared? For sure. I didn't want to get a spinal tap. I didn't want them to have to go, outside. I was a mess. I was a hot mess for sure going into all of this. Again, it was a very scary thing, like to have cancer in your head. And one of the things that I wanted to say anyway is the doctors are always going, especially cancer, because I talk to many oncologists, I talk to radiologists, I talk to all of these people, and always they go in the direction of the worst case scenario.
Right.
They want to tell you the worst case scenario, which is not helpful.
Mm-mm.
It's not, because you're planting those ideas in my head.
Yeah.
And now that's what's in my head, right? You have to remember that the doctors are always going to tell you worst case scenario. So just because the doctor told you something doesn't mean that that's the information, unless you find someone like Mark, Mark is one in a bazillion. Mark's telling you things like, I'm going to get this out of you. You're fine. Don't worry. Right? This kind of narrative, you don't hear that from a cancer doctor.
No.
You really don't. Either they're telling you nothing or they're telling you bad news.
Right.
That's what you're getting from a standard cancer doctor. Mark was a special breed of doctor. But again, one of the things you want to remember is that what the doctor says does not have to dictate the reality. You dictate the reality. You really do. If your headspace is in the place of I'm going to die, this is bad, it's over, you're making that the reality. You need to be in a place where you are saying, I am here to fight and I am going to win. That needs to be the consciousness. Are you scared? Yes. Are you stressed? Yes. Is there anxiety, fear, doubt, depression? All of those things, yes, are on the table. But the thing that stands in the middle of all that is your certainty in the fight. That's what it is.
During your surgery, your second surgery, the one with Mark, while you were under anesthesia, did you have any experiences or any dream type states during that time that you remember? Because a lot of people can.
I don't remember.
Okay.
I remember waking up.
How was that?
Brutal.
Can you elaborate?
Level 10 pain. I woke up. I couldn't really see. I couldn't really hear very well. It was a very invasive surgery. But, when I woke up, Mark was there and said, I got everything. Negative margins, right? This guy is like, this dude really deserves like an award. I mean, for real. I remember a question I used to, there was this like thing I used to say to people all the time, which is that when you get to heaven and God let's just say you get to heaven and you have a conversation with God, his name would be one of the names that I would bring up. His name would be one of the names I would bring up. And I would say, he's, again, another conversation for another time. But I woke up and Mark standing there over me. There were these golf ball sized pieces of gauze that were inserted up into my nasal cavities, which I didn't know about until he pulled them out days later. And it was like I was in level 10 pain. I couldn't really see, I couldn't really hear, and it just felt like someone was just nailing nails into my head. That's how I felt. But anyway, Mark was there too when I woke up, and he was like, I got everything. Going back to what he originally told me the first time I met him, which is that I'm going to get this out of you. So I mean, again, there was a lot of synchronicity to everything. There was a lot of full circle. The surgery went as smooth as it possibly could have gone, which I found out, later after seeing Mark weeks later after the recovery process. But when I woke up in a recovery room, and again, level 10 pain, but they couldn't really give me any kind of painkillers or anything like that. Because they didn't want the blood to. I forget what I still to this day don't remember what it was, but they couldn't give me any pain-killing medicine, so I had to deal with the pain that I was in, and I was in the recovery room. I was waiting for my room. I had a room that was prepared for me, which I had to pay out of pocket for to get my own room. Otherwise, I would have just stayed in the recovery room area. But before I went into surgery, they asked me, they were like, it's $500 and you'll have your own room. And I was like, done. You know what I mean? I was like, who do I write the check to? But I do remember waking up, and the thing that outside of the pain, the thing that was most relevant was I couldn't see. Everything was like, I couldn't even really open my eyes because my face was so swollen. And I just remember the noises of people groaning and moaning and weeping, and that's what I remember the most is that. And I stayed in that room for a while. I remember the nurses there. The nurses weren't that great. When do you ever run into hospital nurses that are like murdering it? You know what I mean? Usually hospital nurses, no offense to hospital nurses, but they're so numb.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing. It's not like they're bumbling around. They're disconnected.
Yeah.
And which, you can't, I get it. It's not a slight, but they really, the nurse who was there, anyway, I was begging her for pain medication. Like I was begging her, and she's like, dude, it's not going to happen. I have strict orders from the doctors that I can't give you pain medication, so just stop asking me. And I was in the room, everyone, like I'm hearing like these kinds of noises, and I'm like, holy shit, you know what I mean? Because you're also in this like waking up from surgery. I think the surgery was like a 5 or 6 hour surgery. And while I'm waiting, I remember the nurse going and bringing like an ice, like Italian ice or something like that, and trying to like spoon feed me some ice, which was very nice of her. But eventually, after a while, they bring me to my room, and it's quiet. I don't know what's going on, by the way, because I can't see, and I can barely, like, all I can hear is, everything is very muffled. But I go into the room, it's quiet, and I'm like, still in level 10 pain. Like 5 minutes later, they rolled somebody else. There's a shared room, there's a curtain up and there's a shared room, and I'm laying there. I hear them coming in the room. I don't know, they're bringing somebody in the room, and as soon as the door closes, I hear this moaning, which I was hearing in the OR. And I'm like, oh my God, like Jesus. Long story short, that night, I finally start to recover enough where my vision is somewhat coming back. My hearing is better for sure. Because the swelling is going down. They're giving me anti-inflammatory. They're injecting something in my stomach. I think it's like anti-inflammatory or something like that, but they're injecting me in the stomach with whatever it is. I don't remember, I don't really know what it was because I was so banged up. But my wits start coming about to some degree. And I think I probably woke up from the surgery around maybe 3 p.m., 4 p.m., so it was still light out. And that night, I don't even know what time it was or whatever, but I hear the kid's dad on the phone, and I find out that the kid next to me is a 22-year-old kid who has a very rare cancer in his spine and in his brain. And the dad is on the phone that night in the room talking to the mom, and he's just, my baby, he's going, our baby. Dude, I can't talk about it. I really can't. It sends me right into the, it sends me right into that, I want to crawl into a hole and cry. But he's on the phone with the mom, and my dad dropped me off at the hospital and was like, see you later, buddy, good luck. And this guy's on the phone with the mom. And I wasn't upset,
but that's what you needed.
No, I didn't want him in the room, So, he's wild. His bedside manner is non-existent, There were several times going through the process where he was driving me to appointments and stuff, and he was like, it's crazy how many people die from cancer, and he would say stuff like that. Yeah. Read how many people die from cancer, he Googled it, you know what I mean? And then he was telling me about it.
In the US it's 400, it's over 400,000.
But anyway, the dad's in the room and he's on the phone talking to the mom. And I was like, this is hell. This is what hell is. The first time I ever understood that when people talk about heaven and hell, that both of those things exist here on earth.
Yeah.
They're not places that are foreign to us. They both exist here in our reality. And that was, I got to visit hell there. And that night was the first time I was laying there and I reached my hands out and I was like, please heal this kid. That was the first time I had done that in a very long time. Where, going back in time a little bit, so for example, I'd be on a bus. So I used to live in Manhattan, so I'd take public transportation. I'd be on the subways, I'd be on the buses, because I lived in Manhattan for many years. And I'd be on the bus and I'd see somebody who was sick or whatever, and I would just, silently, quietly, and then I would just send them that energy. And I was sure I would be able to, again, not a conversation for today, but I did that with the kid. And it was the first time I had done that in many, and I've realized, oh shit, it all came full circle for me in that one particular moment. Hard to explain, hard to get to, but I understood the objective. Because for me, if you think about it really, the whole process that I went through there was relatively smooth. And I was just being put into the right place at the right time.
Mm-hmm. So Mark tells you 7 days, like, you need to be in this hospital.
You need to be in this you're going to be here recovering minimum 7 days. Most likely you're going to be here 10 to 12 days is what I'm being told.
Okay. And you're just like, that's not going to work for me.
That's not going to work for me. No.
Of course.
It was, my surgery was on a Tuesday. Shabbat was on a Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And I was having regular conversations with God saying I need to be out of here for Shabbat.
Mm.
And sure enough, I was home for Shabbat on Friday. Right, so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was two full days. But the thing is, to get out of the hospital, if you pass the cognitive test that they give you and you pass the physical exam that they give you, they can release you.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't pass the test, you can't go. So I had to do like many things, which I don't know, dude. Even Mark said to me when after like the couple of weeks of recovering, once I went back to my dad's apartment and I'm recovering, and then you got to go see Mark for the follow up, and he was like, dude, I swear to you, he's like, I have no idea how you got out of that hospital, because after the surgery, Mark's done, he's gone. You know what I mean? He's there, he does the surgery, he's probably doing surgeries like the thing is that they don't know how long the surgeries are going to take, so he was probably there that day for my surgery. And then after my surgery was done, and once I was in my room, he came back one more time, and I remember him putting his arm on. I don't want to speak for him, but I think, imagine, God forbid, you're that guy, and what you see, and especially being someone like Mark, who you could, he's a genuine human being. He's wearing his heart on his sleeve. He's doing it because he wants to save people's lives. He's not there for any other reason. In my opinion, like, I would be shocked to find out that he's there because of the money or the prestige. He's there because he wants to kill cancer. That's what he's there for. And I'm certain of that, based on conversations that I've had with him, which I could not reiterate. I think for him, I was a breath of fresh air, is what I would imagine, because I don't think he probably runs into that very often, if kind of ever at all, where he saw the process. He was aware of my process there, and my determination and my certainty and all of those things. And Mark's a Cohen, which means he's a high priest. He's a priest. On Shabbat, they call up the Kohen to the ark where the Torah is held, where because they read the Torah on Shabbat.
Yes.
And there's an ark, and you open the doors, Torah comes out. So on Shabbat, on Saturday mornings, the Kohen have a special prayer where they are pulled over to the ark where the Torah is held, and they recite this prayer. And the prayer is, during that time, you can ask for pretty much anything you want, but the general gist is healing. Right? The Kohen have the ability, because that's what Aaron was doing in the one of the jobs of Aaron was to not just atone for the people, but also to diagnose disease and find cures for diseases. This is what Aaron was doing as the high priest. So Mark was a Kohen. He's a special freaking dude, man. And there were many times where I was talking to him about that and expressing to him and talking about miracles and talking about all of these things. So I think for him it was a breath of fresh air. That, God knows what that poor guy's got to go through every single day. God knows. But yeah, I got my butt out of there. And Mark was like, yo, dude. He was like, I genuinely have no idea. You were in there for 2.5 days. I I forced myself out of there.
Well, you're a different type of animal too. Like you said, a problem solver. Like, you know what the destination is going to be. You're going to get to that destination. Like, there's no other way for that to be deviated.
If you can remove all the roadblocks in front of you, yes.
Yeah.
But I remember the first thing I had to do was be able to get out of the bed myself and go pee. So I had to go to the bathroom and urinate on my own.
Mm-hmm. Barely being able to see.
Well, this was also they pulled the catheter out of me, by the way, which, thank you, nurse, for the yanking. She ripped that thing out of me,
Yeah,
dude.
They're not gentle with that.
She was like, "Oh, it's not." I was like, "No!" Dude.
I've had one. They're awful.
Dude, you don't have a pee-pee. I'm sure. I mean, again, I don't want to compare apples to oranges, but I can tell you that was a big tube for a tiny pee-pee hole.
And then they blow up a balloon inside of it.
I know.
Yeah.
I tried taking it out myself.
Of course you did.
I didn't know it was a balloon until I tried to remove it myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Before it was supposed to come out, I was like, "This thing's coming out of me." I was like, "Screw this thing." I couldn't get it out. She should have just let me take it out myself, quite honestly. I asked her. She was like, "Nah, man." She was like, "Yuck." Yeah, I think she made like a ninja noise when she did it too. She was like, "Yeah." But I'll tell you what, the thing that got me out of the door was I wanted to be home for Shabbat. That was really what the main driving force behind it was. I wanted to be home for Friday night for Shabbat. That was my driving force. The second driving force was that I was a human pincushion. You can't sleep. The hospital is not a place where you recover and rest.
No.
It's a place where you get tortured.
Yeah.
As soon as you're like, I remember there was like, because I'm already in level 10 pain. Also, I had begged Mark to take the things. He's like, dude, I can't take the things out of your nose because that's what's stopping your brain fluid from leaking. Those things are holding up, because he had to go up here and remove this bone, the crib-borne plate, and then repair it with tissue from my sinuses and bone from inside my sinuses. Crazy, crazy stuff. Crazy surgery. Really crazy surgery. And I was like, Mark, please. Because it was driving me. It felt like there was something pushing my eyeballs out of my head. Is what it felt like. It was torturous. It was like level 10 torture. And I begged him, and finally, I think it was Thursday morning, he took him out, and he had to pulled them out, and they were like bloop, and they came out, and they were like this big. I don't know how they even came out of my nostrils. It was like gauzes that were this big, soaked in blood.
Did you feel like an immense amount of relief right after that?
Oh my God.
What was that like?
Oh, thank you.
So,
but then different pain came.
I was gonna say, what was the next level? What was the next thing?
I was able to feel the actual surgery now more, because the gauze was just the pressure. It was the pain. The pain of the pressure was much greater than the pain of the surgery. So once the gauze was out, I was able to feel the pain from the actual surgery. It took me around a week and a half, 2 weeks to be okay, where I could actually function on my own.
Okay, so.
But I did get out of the hospital, which I shouldn't have. Really, I should have been there for 7 days, but I forced my way out of there. They can't, if you pass the tests. So the thing is that from my understanding, if you request the test, they have to give the test to you. But the first thing is you got to get out of the bed and pee. So I don't think most people are making it out of the bed to go pee in the first place. So the tests get gradually more intense, up to the point where they actually made me walk down like a 150-foot corridor, and then up 2 flights of stairs, and then down 2 flights of stairs, and then back to my room, which I was able to do without being able to see.
Did you take your time on that though? Did every step, did you have like a prayer or like a meditation that you were going through in your head that just got you every step of the way?
I need to get out of here. I was also in the neurological wing of the hospital.
That's rough.
So everybody that was in there was in bad shape.
Yeah.
It was a visit to hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
heard you say that you've sent healing and things like that to people, and you mentioned the kid that you had in the room with you. Were you able to perform any of those on yourself, or were you just like, God, please give me the strength to get through this?
Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
I really don't know. The intention was there the whole time, but the thing is like, as I'm looking back on it now, I needed to be in that hospital after that surgery. That needed to happen. If I would have just if I would have went after the scans and Mark was like, dude, I don't know what happened. There's a miracle here. You have no, see you later. I needed to experience that hospital. I needed that.
Not just for that boy, but also the pain and
all of it.
All of it.
I needed to. That was the visit to hell.
Mm-hmm.
So I needed to visit hell. And actually, there's a story in the Bible where God takes Moses through all the levels of hell and takes him actually to the deepest level of hell, where he apparently sees this crocodile. And it just terrifies Moses to the point where he sees what real evil looks like, what real pain and suffering looks like. And after that, his mindset changes. So again, I'm not comparing myself to Moses in any which way. I'm just saying that going through those levels of hell and experiencing that changes your mindset completely.
So you're discharged on Friday.
Yeah.
You observe Shabbat.
Mm-hmm.
How was that for Shabbat after your surgery?
The thing I remember coming home is, I don't know why, like, when you don't eat?
Oh, yeah.
And, like, you want the weirdest food?
Yeah.
I wanted green grapes, which I don't even eat, like, green grapes, right? Have you ever seen me eat a green grape? Right? And all I wanted to eat were green grapes that I put in, water with ice and left them in the refrigerator. Mm. And, like, I ate green grapes for, 3 days straight. I was just so happy to not be in the hospital because that was, literally a visit. Everything after that is really not that. That
was the worst.
For me to look at a situation and be like, this is horrible, this is terrible, that was horrible, that was terrible. This is I don't know if you've heard me say this, but people, I don't like the word problem.
Right.
When someone says I have a problem.
You say no, you don't.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
You don't want to have a problem.
Yeah.
God forbid you have a problem.
Okay, so Friday you observed Shabbat. How long did you go back to work? How long was the time frame before you went back to work?
Once I was able to regain full vision, which was probably Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm going to say by Tuesday, Wednesday. I should have still been in the hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was probably back to work by Tuesday.
Okay.
I need to keep myself busy. What am I going to do? Lay on the couch and wallow and be like, oh my God, I need to be doing something. Mm-hmm. I can't just sit on the couch. You've seen me try to sit on the couch for 5 minutes. I lose my mind.
It doesn't happen.
I lose my mind.
Yeah.
So sitting in a house and recovering and all this other stuff, which if I can get up and go, then I'm going to. So yeah, I went back to work as quickly as once I was able to get in a car and drive, because that was my problem. It was I couldn't see enough to drive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I need to be able to drive myself to work.
Yeah. How was it here for you, knowing that everybody that you were around, you had the surgery? How was that for you?
So again, still a lot of people didn't know that I had a tumor or I was going through this. Not many people knew. But I just wanted to keep I wanted to keep myself busy. Mm-hmm. As soon as I was able to come back to work, physically, even if I was struggling, I was just happy to be back at work. Yeah, I love what I do.
It shows.
Yeah, I genuinely love what I do. So for me, it's not like coming back to work per se. Mm. It's familiar.
Okay. How did you physically, mentally, and emotionally navigate through radiation while working?
Well, the thing is that, I was hoping that I wasn't going to have to get any radiation, because when I woke up from my surgery, Mark told me he had gotten negative margins. Mm-hmm. But after, going back for my follow-up after the surgery, Mark tells me that there could be microscopic tumor cells that they didn't really see in the biopsies or X, Y, and Z, and that, if I really want to finish this off, that I need radiation. And if Mark would have told me to, dangle myself by my toe. I would have done whatever Mark told me to do at that point. So when Mark told me that he wanted me to do radiation, I did have a little pushback on it, but at the same time, he told me, I'm going to get you in with this doctor, this radiologist, who is actually an award-winning doctor in the field, and impossible to get her on the board, but Mark wound up hooking it up and getting me with her. And two types of radiation, there's photon and there's proton radiation. Photon radiation is directed in a much more widespread area, kind of like a blow dryer, where proton is like a laser, like precision. So since it was in my head, I needed precision, which actually is going to be a crazy thing to say. My insurance wouldn't cover proton because it's much more expensive. They said that photon has the same result, but only thing is that the after effects and the effects of photon radiation are a lot more aggressive than proton, which is direct focus to the area that needs to get hit.
So what were your side effects with the radiation?
Well, I can tell you that going into it was, you have all the doctors calling you and telling you all of the things that are going to happen and all of the side effects, and I needed 35 rounds. That's a lot. That's like, I think the maximum. I got the maximum dosage. The thing is that with Sloan and with like these kinds of cancer doctors is that really the first time you want to drop a nuclear bomb on your cancer. Like you want to eradicate that thing. Like you want to overkill it. You're essentially like dropping a nuclear bomb on like a public park. You know what I mean? That's their approach to these cancer doctors, which, unfortunately, they can only offer you treatment that they have access to.
Right.
I'm sure several people have cured cancer in a much more digestible way, but I'm sure those people are all dead or locked in a basement somewhere because Big Pharma is making a shit tons of money off of cancer treatments and follow-up treatments and X, Y, and Z. So while I do believe that there's been several cures found for cancer, I would probably bet the house on it. I'm sure those people disappear very quickly, or silenced, or whatever, paid off, whatever it may be. But yeah, I would say that after Mark passed me on to Dr. Lee, who became my radiologist. And she's the one that sets up the diet, the doses, and X, Y, and Z. But they're basically telling you, like, for me, the real struggle there was that if I reached, so I typically walk around at around like 185 pounds. Like that's my normal walking weight. They had told me that if I dropped below 155, they were going to put in a feeding tube. Right? Because once you start getting radiation, especially to your head and neck, you can't really eat. Like it's not just that, the taste, the metallic taste of everything tastes like death. So eating things just based on taste alone is very difficult. Long story short, by the end of radiation, guess what weight I was? I was 156 pounds. I wouldn't let myself, I forced myself to stay above the 155 because I was like, there's no way you're putting a feeding tube in me. Which goes in through your stomach, by the way.
Yeah. What particular foods did you eat to get you? Like, were you even able to stomach them?
I was a lot of soup.
Okay.
I was doing a lot of like soup, like vegetable broths, and I would put stuff in the soups, and I would just try to swallow. You know what I mean? I was just trying to swallow it. I wasn't even really chewing food.
Or did you find that your tongue area or like your even throat was just sensitive and sore?
I have pictures of what I look like somewhere in the radiation. Maybe we can put them up here.
Yeah.
But I was fried by the end of it. I was fricasseed. It was rough. It was rough because also what wound up happening was because originally my lymph nodes in my neck showed up bright or enlarged. They wanted to be sure that there was no microscopic cells there, so they also wanted to do my neck. Thus, that's why I have this like circle here where I can't grow hair, and also I can't grow hair here up on the top of my mustache because of the radiation field. So I can't grow hair here or here, and I can't smell a thing now. After surgery, I told Mark, please save, if you can save olfactory nerves, please, because I don't want to lose my sense of smell. And after my surgery, one of the things, once I finally got up and I would like recovered, I was able to smell tea. I was drinking a lot of tea. And I had this like hibiscus blueberry tea, and I opened the thing and I could smell the tea, and I was like, oh, thank God. After radiation, done. You could literally put gasoline under my nose and I wouldn't be able to smell it.
Yeah.
So, you know, that was a large effect of it. But the biggest effect of the radiation was being in the radiation center and going in there every single day and seeing people with their children, bringing their children back and forth from radiation. That was really the thing that needed. That's why I think I had to go through that. I mean, I still suffer from the side effects.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've seen, I don't want to get into the gruesome details of what it is, but I have, you know, horrible pains in my neck. I get horrible headaches. I don't have sections of my sinuses are just completely gone, so I can't filter mucus. It gets stuck in the back of my throat,
Mm-hmm.
or it just literally just falls out of my nose,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of can be gross.
Can you feel it? Like, can you still feel sensations there?
Yeah. No, I can still feel I mean, I have all of my faculties are okay, but you know, my neck, the neck is rough because with proton radiation, they go in at different angles, so that they don't over radiate one area. So I have one this way, going through the back here, going through this way here. So you know, I think I had, and I also had here radiation to the lymph nodes. So I had many different points of entry for radiation. But really here in the back, my vagus nerves are like shot.
Yeah.
But I don't show it. I don't think I show it.
No.
But I'm in pain quite frequently. But what am I going to do? I'm going to complain about it? What's that going to change?
Right.
And the way that radiation works is it's 5 days a week. You get the weekends off. So I had 35 rounds, which is 7 weeks straight, with the weekends off.
How did you mentally get yourself through that?
Sometimes actually they did 6 in a week, and I would only get Sunday off.
Oof.
Yeah.
How did you mentally get yourself through that?
Well, it was what it was. Like I said about my neck pain. Like what am I going to do? I'm going to stop and complain about this? You know, the hardest thing was going into that, and I would bring my prayer book, and I would bring, you know, I would bring books with me into the place, and there you waited. There was times you waited half an hour, 40 minutes, an hour. Could be, you know, you don't know. The machine went down. Whatever's happening there, you'd wait. But I would bring my prayer books, and I would be in there, and I would pray for everybody in the building. The people who were coming in, the people who were bringing the people in with them, whether it was parents or friends or siblings, or, you know, whoever it was. I would pray for the people performing the process, the radiologists, everybody in the building was getting prayed for. The people at the front desk, give them the right kind of wisdom to say the right things to people who were, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I spent my time there, was primarily in prayer. Even now, whenever I have to go for a routine checkup or something like that, I'm bringing the books and I'm praying for everybody. And I'm not going to get into that, but.
Okay. Have you explored any functional medicine to help with the radiation?
I did everything, Allie.
Okay.
I went to energy healing, I went to theta healing, I went to astrologers, I went to oxygen machines, which the doctors told me don't go into the oxygen chambers because it could reignite, you know. Don't do anything that's good for you know what I mean? But I changed my diet completely. I did anything that I could have done, I did. And that's one of the things, if you're going through cancer, God forbid a million times, you need to explore all your options. I met people who were like, I'm not going traditional medicine, I'm not doing chemo, I'm not doing radiation, I'm going to go holistic. And I heard bad stories about it. Mm-hmm. You need to do everything. Mm-hmm. Number one, find the doctor. Find your doctor and then listen to your doctor. Otherwise, why are you even finding a doctor? Why are you even dealing with a doctor in the first place? You know, you need to find a doctor you can trust. If you are in a situation and you don't trust your doctor, or you don't think your doctor has your best interest in mind, you need to find another doctor, because that doctor is going to kill you or make things much worse for you.
Yes.
So, and another thing that I think is really important here is one of the things that you hear in the cancer hospitals and people going through cancer is they like to refer to it as my cancer. Even the app for Sloan that you have on your phone that tells you all your appointments and the diagnoses and all the results from tests and stuff, it's my MSK, which is Memorial Sloan Kettering. So this is a very interesting wording, isn't it?
It's very programmable.
Yeah. It's your tumor, your cancer, right? And they get you to the place where you start saying my cancer. It's not yours. It doesn't belong to you. It's invading you. It's the enemy. It's not yours. It's an invasion. And if you look at it as my tumor, my cancer, don't.
You claim it.
You don't claim it.
Right.
It's not mine. You know how many times I said that to doctors? I said, it's not mine.
And they look at you like
They're like,
have
okay,
heads.
okay,
Yeah.
all right,
Yeah.
you know. But Mark never, I don't think I ever remember Mark saying something like that.
Do you think it's because he's a Cohen?
I think he's a special person, yeah.
Yeah. What would you say to somebody that is going through radiation right now?
I would say if you can get proton radiation over photon radiation, think about that. I actually came out of pocket, and I've never told anybody this, but I emptied my savings account.
Wow.
Because my insurance wouldn't cover it.
I know people that go completely bankrupt, lose their home from cancer treatments.
I literally emptied my savings account
Wow.
to pay for proton. So I would say if you can go proton, make sure your insurance is good, make sure you have out-of-state insurance. Most people's insurance only cover them in their state that they live in.
Correct.
Make sure you have out-of-state insurance. It's not that much more expensive. I would say make sure you have out-of-state insurance, because sometimes the best doctor is not in your state.
You are one of the most extremely sufficient individuals that I've met. So did you even allow anybody to take care of you?
No.
Why? Because a lot of people are going to ask that question. Why didn't you allow others to take care of you?
Because I'm the most qualified to take care of myself. I'm not saying that's the right answer.
But do you also think it was because it was not their battle and you need to finish it completely?
I didn't really have anybody.
Okay.
I didn't really have anybody that, I didn't have that person to take care of me. Also, I don't want to be obtrusive. You know what I mean? I don't want to. I don't like to be. What's the word?
A burden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a burden
Yeah.
in anybody's life.
Yeah. I can see that.
There's some people who need to be taken care of.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you're in a situation where you cannot take care of yourself, yes, you need someone to take care of you. The best care you can possibly get is someone who's caring for you without agenda. So again, if you're in a place where because you're always going to feel burdensome.
Yeah.
Even if you're paying someone to take care of you, you still feel like a burden.
Yeah.
You feel like you don't feel good about it. The only time you're going to feel good about someone taking care of you is if there's no agenda behind the care.
Yeah.
So that's really a difficult trick. Now, if we look at what happened to me in Tucson the last time we were out there, which was, when was that? Like May?
May. Yeah.
In May, I worked myself to the point of fainting. Right,
Yeah.
I fainted twice.
Yeah.
That's actually what happened was that I wound up fainting. I was dehydrated. I was malnourished. I was exhausted. All of it. Like it was a cocktail. It was a cocktail of.
So hot.
It was a cocktail. It was heat exhaustion. It was a cocktail, and I wound up fainting twice.
Yeah.
The next day, I went to work. I was like, I don't think I need to go to the hospital, but then in the middle of the day, I was like, I'm not okay. So we drove back to the house, and I, laid down on the couch, and then I took myself to the hospital the next day, and the doctors told me, like, dude, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean? Happened to me too in the Appalachians when I hiked the Appalachians, and I fell. I tore my calf muscle. I sprained my ankle. I tore my meniscus. I had infectious rashes on my body. My feet were blistered and bleeding. I was destroyed. And when I finally got myself to the hospital, after all of that, I asked the doctor, what do you think I asked the doctor?
Okay. What'd you ask?
Can I keep going? And he was like, what? I'm not going to answer that question.
I can see you asking something like, am I good enough to just
Yeah,
continue to go?
Yeah, because my goal was to get back to New Jersey, and I had only made it to the end of Vermont at that point. So I still had a ways to go. Mm-hmm. I'm not here to not finish the race.
Yeah.
I want to finish the race at whatever cost, because that's the gig. I'm not here to not finish the race. It's a hard thing to do, but again, What's going to happen is people are going to look at me and my way of doing things and potentially disagree with my way. Oh, you need to take care of yourself. You need to relax. Who says I'm not taking care of myself? Just because the way I take care of myself is not the way you expect me or think I should take care of myself, doesn't mean I'm not taking care of myself.
Yeah.
Because taking care of myself looks like finishing the race.
Mm-hmm.
That's what taking care of myself looks like.
Do you think that surviving cancer made you a better person?
I think it course corrected me. I don't know about better person. I don't know if I would use that language.
Do you think that getting cancer was another way for you to detoxify your soul, or just the vessel?
I don't think this was. I think this was a course correction. Is really what I think it is. I don't think I was ever supposed to go. I think that God gave me this business. I really do genuinely think that, because the success and the growth of the company is not normal, especially in this day and age, for someone to go from homelessness, essentially. You know, I mean, again, I wasn't homeless on the streets like eating garbage, but I had no money. I had nothing. I had zero when I started this company. I had nothing. But at the same time, I did let the success of that, at some point rule me.
Do you think that there could have been any other disease or any other diagnosis that would have directed you back
No,
on?
it was perfect.
That was it.
Yeah, it was perfect.
Yeah.
The reason why it was perfect is because it was something that I could overcome. It wasn't. It wasn't something that was going to hinder me for the rest of my life. It was a roadblock.
Okay. When you were out of the spiritual pocket and having all this monetary success, did you think that Satan was playing with you during that time to get you off of your spiritual path?
For sure. For sure.
What was the biggest moment that you realized that? Like, when was the moment that you realized that?
During the time, I didn't realize it at all, which is weird because I taught that for many years. So I literally taught that information for years. And so, you would think that I would know better, but that's the devil for you. Mm-hmm. The devil gets you. The devil is always a step ahead of you. And if you are not being guided by and driven by the light force, by the good that exists in the world, the devil's always got the upper hand, and you just don't see it coming. That revelation is much later on into the process of my diagnosis and things like that. But at the time, I did not know my strings were being pulled.
Do you think that your competitors also had a role into the negativity being sent to you and it going right where your cancer was?
Well, that's a really great observation and question, but yes, I do. I think, and I don't know what your awareness is around it, but it's weird for someone like me, because I'm a small fish. There's much bigger fish than me in the sea, much bigger. And it's interesting the amount of evil eye and things that are evil speech that are directed at me. It's odd. It's weirdly odd how much. And I do believe that that's a part of the devil's game plan, is to get into those people's heads around me and come and attack.
Could you guide us through what it was emotionally for you when you went through getting on your hands and knees and begging God for assistance?
Well, it was a gradual process. It was a gradual process because it's like riding a bike. I was a professional bike rider, and then I stopped riding the bike for many years. And then as soon as I was diagnosed, I jumped right back on the bike, and it was wobbly. And it was not easy to move myself forward quickly. But one of the first things that I did was I went to the ocean, and it was cold. It was cold, and I went to the ocean, and I did what's called a mikveh. And for anybody who doesn't know what mikveh is like traditional baptism if you're a Jew, right? So you're supposed to go into a natural body of water and submerge yourself a number of times with certain meditations. It's what Aaron the high priest, Moses' brother, was doing. When Christ in the Bible said, "Go and cleanse yourself and then you'll be healed," Christ was talking about mikveh. And that was I went to the ocean, and I got on my knees in the ocean, and I put my hands up, and I said, please help me navigate through this. I'm so sorry. And the lamentation that I had wasn't necessarily for myself. It was for the fact that of all that I got myself there in the first place. That's what made me sad. Was not that I was diagnosed with this, but that how stupid of me. How could I have been so stupid? That was really the tough pill to swallow.
Were you able to forgive yourself immediately after that?
No. But after coming out of the ocean, I parked illegally, and I just ran out of my car because I didn't know how to get to the beach. I was just looking for shore. I was just looking to get myself into the ocean. But when I came out of the ocean, I remember sitting on the divider, because it was like a highway, and I was sitting on the divider, and a black and white ladybug landed on my knee. I had never seen a black and white ladybug before. I don't know if you have or haven't, but I had never seen a black and white ladybug.
What do you think that resembled?
Hope. You're not alone. And I'm going to bring, I interviewed Benjamin here on this podcast. I'm going to bring Benjamin into the fold for a minute because he was the first person that I actually called. I hadn't spoken to him in a very, very long time. I had a traumatic experience, because I was in the Kabbalah Center working there as a full-time volunteer, mentoring, teaching, all of these things that I was doing there. I just left on my own. That's another whole nother conversation. One day maybe I'll talk about that. But either way, no matter what was going on there or my thoughts or whatever people might think or say, Benjamin was always my boy. That was my friend. So, no matter what, that was my friend, and I called him, and he's the one that actually told me to go to the ocean. Because I wanted to do mikveh. I called him up I was like, dude, I need to get into a mikveh. And he's like, go to the ocean right now. And he sent me meditations that you're not supposed to have. When I had the biopsies for the lymph nodes, I went back into that place again of like, oh shit, this could, if it spread to my lymph nodes, that's God forbid a million times, this is bad news. Yep. And I called him up, and he, just like I would tell you, and he was like, what are you worried about? Nothing wrong with you. Bye. Like hung up, right? And he like hung up the phone on me. You know what I mean? And he was right. His consciousness was much stronger than mine at the time, so he was able to do things like that for me at that time, which is trump my own doubts and my own worries and my own fears, which you really need somebody like that. And so, I need to bring him into the fold of this because he had that level of certainty and consciousness that was needed in a process like this. If you can't have it on your own, because again, I went into this worry and panic, and there was never like, I'm fine, nothing wrong with me. I was like, oh shit. So bringing him into the fold, there were several times where he was able to trump my consciousness and my level of worry.
What is one piece of advice you would give yourself?
What do you mean? As in reference to what?
As in reference to being a survivor of cancer. What is one piece
During the process or after?
After.
Stay on the bike.
What is one thing that you hope for this world?
That people would shift their focus in the right direction.
Do you think that you're a good person?
No.
Do you think that you're a kind person?
Yes.
Do you think that you are a fair person?
No.
Can you elaborate?
I've told you this before. You don't get to say you're a kind person. You don't get to say I do think I'm a kind person because if someone needed me for something, I'm there.
Right.
So that I'm given, right? Good person, I don't get to make that judgment. Only you get to make that judgment about me. I don't get to say I'm a good person. Only you can say that.
True. Fair,
what does that even mean? You might think I'm fair, she thinks I'm unfair, he thinks I'm fair, his one thinks I'm unfair. What does fair even mean? Everyone thinks life is unfair. How am I going to operate as an individual and be fair when the world already thinks life is unfair? What is fair is completely objective.
2 more questions.
Go ahead.
One thing is, what does your heart desire? What is one thing that your heart desires?
to be an example for young people, a good example for young people.
If you could only have one book to read for the rest of your life, what would it be?
It would be the Bible.
Hmm.
You know that, though.
I do.
That's easy. That's the easiest question you've asked me all day.
What version though?
I would take the Ethiopian Bible.
Hmm.
It's the most complete. It's the most accurate. Translation is the closest. Most of the Bibles that we have our hands on now are, skewed in many different ways, altered in many. The Ethiopian Bible is probably the best version of the Bible. Not the one that I would go handing out to somebody, but if I am diving into biblical study, that's the joint.
Cool. That is all the questions I have for you, my friend.
All right, love you.
Love you too.